Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. I'm here with one of my favorite people, Kimberly, who has had an incredible success journey with us over the years. You can see some before and after pictures of her at defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. But today I wanted to give her the opportunity to just share some of her wisdom and insights and things that helped her over the years, and to ask any questions that she wanted. We always get into a pretty deep conversation when we get going, so I thought I'd just have her on and see where we go. What do you think, Kim?
Great. Sounds awesome. I love chatting with you. Yeah, we always end up in that situation where it's like, we could talk for hours.
So let's do that.
Yeah, cool.
I understand you made some notes. I'll let you take it away.
I did. You had asked me if I had, some tips or tricks or things that I had struggled with and then figured out in the end. So, with the idea of helping people cut to the chase, one of the things I know for sure, and it's one of the first things I thought of, is that you can often hear that voice in your head that says, you can't do this. It's too hard. Because these techniques that you teach are simple. There's a simplicity there in what you need to do, but, it's work to implement. And you need to keep at it. You can't give up. So often I would hear that voice that would say, this is hard. I don't want to do it. I always fail. So why bother? Those kind of things. We've all heard those thoughts.
Yeah.
And the main thing is that those thoughts for me were kind of tricky because I thought they were my own thinking for the longest time, even when I was cognizant of the concept of the pig and how these were coming from a corrupted survival drive in my head. I still would think that the this is too hard thoughts were mine. And it really was such a eureka moment and such a breakthrough when I realized that those thoughts were also coming from the pig, attempting to demoralize me and make me give up so that I would go back to overeating.
Kimberly, I'm going to jump in for 1 second just because some of the people listening will be listening cold.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They might just be hearing this on the radio for the first time, and they don't know that Defeat Your Cravings is a system which helps you to separate all your constructive thoughts about food from all of your destructive thoughts about food. And we do that with very simple black and white lines. Like, I'll never have chocolate on the weekends or something like that. And then we'll say that all of the thoughts that suggest that you have chocolate during the week would be your inner food demon or your inner pig or your inner goblin, some type of a fictitious entity. We don't really think that we have pigs and food demons and goblins inside of us, but that by clearly separating from them, it gives us the opportunity to wake up at the moment of impulse and make other choices, think other things, do some things to take care of our needs otherwise, surf the urge, and get through to the other side without doing the destructive things that we've done in the past. So that's what Kimberly means when she's talking about what a relief it was for her to recognize that this thought that says it's too hard, you should give up, was really her inner pig. She just means that it was a destructive thought that she finally gave herself permission to separate from so that she could disempower it and make other choices. Right, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, thinking about that we might have listeners that haven't read your book or aren't sure what we're really talking about. I talk to friends and other people in my community that are constantly saying to me, even still, it's been 2 years and I still have people going, oh, how did you lose all that weight? People who I haven't seen in a while. When I go back east to visit, I lost over 90 pounds. So it's pretty remarkable. I'm kind of a different person to see me visually. And so I often explain the whole thing to them easily with, we all have good thoughts about what we need to do for our health and well-being. And we also have negative thoughts that lead us down that road of like, but I just want to have fun and it's not fun to do the healthy things. And how do you separate out those thoughts and always act from the higher point? And if you're trying to control a penchant for overeating or the types of foods that you crave, and also if you're trying to lose weight in particular, you want to be acting from that higher place.
Exactly.
What you teach people is a way to change the way you think. I know you've heard me say before, after practicing what I call the principles and techniques, Glenn Livingston's principles and techniques, after practicing them for a time, I realized I felt like I had gotten a brain transplant. And I know you've heard me say that before, and maybe some of your listeners have too. Suddenly, my behaviors were coming from a place that I had always observed naturally slender people that seemed to crave healthier foods and did not have this constant desire or urge to have other things, or too much of anything. I became that person, which is still amazing to me. Even after 2 years, I'm also still like, wow.
No, it wasn't just from saying, this is not me, this is my pig. There were a lot of other things you did along the way, weren't there?
Yes, there were. And I can break that down pretty easily because I've done that for a lot of people. And that is you, me, my higher self, became defined by my reasons for wanting to control my eating and drop weight and become healthier. What we call the big why. Writing that out, actually writing it out in print, not just in your head thinking about it. And looking at that and reading it every day, like clockwork, like a prayer. This is what I want. This is what I really want. And then kind of juxtapositioning it next to the desire to overeat. Like, well, what do you want? Do you want the cupcake, or do you want to be healthier, more slender, able to impact your family and friends in a positive way, to be stronger, to not have major health issues, which I was certainly experiencing? So that was huge right there, defining myself versus how I might define, and if we could use the term, the pig, those thoughts in my mind that just wanted to overeat. So that careful definition, and then creating rules for myself. Well, how am I going to get to my goal? How am I going to achieve my big why? That became the way to create rules for myself. And those rules became sacred, about what I would eat and not eat, to become a person who just doesn't eat junk food. And it took time. I mean, I had to do it every day in order to get my brain to switch gears. I had to move it a little bit at a time every day until I was officially in that space. Does that make sense?
It makes every bit of sense in the world. I appreciate you saying that. Okay, so you wrote a bunch of other things down.
Mm-hmm. I did.
What did you want to share?
We talk about the thoughts in our head that are directing us, the cravings or the urges in our head. We often refer to them as pig squeals, right? And so, this idea that the pig is squealing for junk food or whatever. And when you break that down, it's not just a thought that it's like, oh, eat the cupcake. It's more sophisticated than that. And one of the things that I would hear constantly, and I know other people do too, is that I should find a different weight loss program, diet, or type of exercise. And in the meantime, I can just enjoy eating until I find this magical program that I haven't already experienced. Each time I would fail at something, and I could tell you all the commercial programs and all the books I read and how many times I invented my own little diet or whatever. And then eventually I would fail. Everybody experiences this where it's like, oh, I broke my diet. And then I would hear this thought that would be, well, find something different. That didn't work for you. You failed at it because it didn't work for you. Find something different now. And of course, in the meantime, until I find the next greatest thing, I can go ahead and eat whatever I want and enjoy that. And I think, Glenn, the thing that's really interesting about this, and I've thought about this a lot, is I think I became weirdly addicted, if I can use that word, to the process. So it became less about the food and more about the excitement of doing research online and going to the bookstore and looking in the diet and nutrition section. And like that was exciting to discover the latest thing. And then, of course, I would read some book and be like, oh my God, this is it. This is the thing. This is going to save my life, and be very excited about it. And then I would have to plan when I was going to implement the new solution, which was always on a Monday, right? So next Monday. Or maybe the first of the month, because I'm going to need to shop and do this and that. There would need to be all this prep. During the research time and the excitement and the prep, I would just be eating everything that wasn't nailed down because I wasn't on the new diet yet. So I could go to the deli and get that big sandwich, and I could go out for pizza with my husband, and I could drink all the beer, and I could eat the big breakfast and the snacks and the bakery and blah, 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 because help was on the way. And for now, I could relax.
There's a cleanup crew coming tomorrow.
Exactly, exactly. And so, of course, this put me on a really classic, what we call like the binge and restrict cycle.
The feast and famine cycle.
Exactly. Feast and famine. You're either overeating or undereating all the time. There's no normal. You're either on a diet or you're eating everything that's not nailed down, like all the time. Depending on how successful you are during the famine phase, you're always losing a few pounds and then gaining it back plus a pound or two.
And also, like the psychology of the famine phase is almost like you're emptying the garbage can so there's more room to put garbage in.
Yes, yes. And I like to say to people when I show them my before and after pictures, it took about 25 years, it was a good long time, that I literally dieted my way up to 250 pounds. I literally dieted my way up. That's that part of the story.
How did you overcome that?
I would be successful at various times with various things. You know, I lost and gained like the same 20 pounds frequently. But it was actually discovering the first book that you wrote that is when I learned to apply the concept of it's not my diet. I know how to diet. I know what foods are healthy and are not healthy. So this idea of fooling myself into thinking, well, I don't know, I'm going to have to find something that will tell me. No, that was nonsense. I had dieted so much that I knew what worked and what didn't. But what I hadn't done was changed my mind. I hadn't changed my thinking. My thinking just kept saying, well, I'd like to be thinner. I would be healthier and I would look nicer. But food, yummy, you know? So I kept bouncing between those two things. And I needed a way to say, how can I separate those thoughts and act from that place, always that higher place of the person who would like to be slender and healthy?
I got you. I just wanted to underscore a little bit about what you said, and then we'll talk more about the solution for you. We call this the grass is greener squeal because the pig says the grass is greener on the other side. There's a better diet you should be on. You know, in the meantime, until you can get yourself on that diet and do all the preparation, you might as well just go to town and binge all you can and eat all you can. We like to tell the pig in that situation that the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where it's watered. I went through something similar where it always seemed like I had to find the perfect food plan before I would be able to eat well. And I finally realized that even if I had a plan that was 80% perfect, it would be 400% better to stick to it than to jump from plan to plan to plan in pursuit of the perfect plan. The grass is greener where it's watered. So staying with something and sticking to it is much more important than finding the absolute perfect diet. That's how I got over that.
Yeah. And learning your techniques for doing that, the way we think and how you focus on what I also like to call brain training, how to train my brain to think like a naturally slender, healthy person. One of the things that I created that really changed my life and continues to be a lifeline for me, and I try to teach it to others as best I can, is having a daily routine. Most of us, you know, bathe every day. We brush our teeth. We clean the dishes that we use in our home. We make the bed. I mean, you know, we all have different habits, but most of us have hygiene habits that just come naturally. And I like to say, well, What about brain hygiene? Is there anything you do for your brain every day that helps keep it clean, so to speak, and healthy?
How do you floss your brain? What do you do for your brain every day?
Exactly. Exactly. And so I created a daily routine for myself that I do every single morning. It has three components. And doing that, I've done it now for, I'd say it took me about 6 months to develop it and figure out what was really useful and what wasn't. And now I've been at it for a year and a half. And again, in that first year, I lost over 90 pounds and I've kept it off. Basically, that daily routine is done in the morning, first thing. I read my big why. I tweak it frequently. I call it my reasons for doing what I do, my reasons for getting up in the morning.
So, for example, what are some things in your reasons?
Some of the things in my reasons are things like my husband, my daughter, our home, the things I love to do, my community, like how important it is for me to be healthy for all these people. The example I set for my adult daughter of reclamation and that anything is possible. The fact that I'm able to be healthy and slender for my healthy, slender husband, who we are now retirement age and he is retired and we are having so much fun. And we want that to continue. My biggest fear years ago, I'll just say briefly, I was diabetic. I was having problems with my eyesight. I was developing neuropathy. I had doctors constantly cautioning me about my kidney health. I had been diabetic for a long time, and it had been very much out of control for a couple of decades, with brief moments of bringing it under control with really heavy duty meds, like injecting insulin 4 times a day. But anyway, without getting too into that, my biggest fear was that my husband, who had worked very hard for decades, long, long hours, would finally get to retire because we had scrimped and saved and planned well. And, neither one of us were focused on wanting to be rich or having wealthy things, but we decided that a nice, modest middle class income would allow him to get out of the rat race he was in. And that happened. He made it happen. And my biggest fear was that he would spend his retired years pushing me around in a wheelchair and that I would end up with my feet amputated or some other horror or blind. And that it would be such a sad thing for him and my daughter to watch my slow decline or fast decline.
How do they feel about it now?
Oh my God, they're both overjoyed and they're super proud of me. And my closest friends are super proud of me. It has been wonderful.
So, you were telling us about your routine.
Yeah. So yeah, the routine, when I say it has been my lifeline, I really mean that. Every morning, it's like a devotional. It's like anything that anybody does, like in a ritualistic way, because it's deeply meaningful to them and they have faith in it, And to me, it's my daily routine. I call it my 3 R's. And the first thing I read is my reasons. And I have them on my laptop and my phone. So no matter where I am, this can happen. I read my reasons. It's probably 3 or 4 paragraphs. It's pretty quick. It's 1 page of writing. And so it takes me just a few minutes. And then the second thing I do is I read my rules. And they're the rules that I live by. And I only have 3 of them, and they're sacred to me. Those rules keep me at this current healthy weight, and they keep me from straying into overeating and overindulging, and they just do. And I read my rules to myself, even though I have them memorized. I remind myself, and there's something about seeing them in print that is different than just thinking about them. Sometimes I read them out loud. There's something about saying them also.
It activates a different part of the brain.
Yeah, it's powerful. And then the third thing I do is what we call, if it's okay, a preemptive refutation. And what a preemptive refutation is, if I can explain it, is I ask that inner voice, I'm going to call it the pig. Anybody can call it anything they want, but basically it is your survival drive that's kind of been hijacked by all the overly delicious food that's out there in the world, how incredibly accessible so many delicacies are these days. Basically, I ask that inner pig, hey, what's going on today? What's the plan for today? And how are you planning to hijack my plan and make it your plan, pig? And, it could be, for an example, tomorrow I'm going out to lunch with our daughter. My husband and I are going to drive into Portland, and I live on the Oregon coast. We're going to drive to Portland and have lunch with our daughter. And I know that the pig gets very excited in restaurants because those menus are so full of wonderful things and delicious things. And my plan is to order a salad, an entree salad. It tends to be my go-to in a restaurant because that's a healthy amount of calories and nutrition for me. But the pig will want me to have something deep fried. And so I ask it, well, what are you going to do to me today? What are you going to tell me that I need today? And then I listen, and it says, order the deep fried whatever. And then I basically say, no, I'm not going to. I respond to it, and I'm not really talking to it, but I'm reminding myself because, there really is no it, as we've pointed out. It's still just my own thoughts in my own brain. And I simply say, I get it that would be enjoyable, but no, it's a lie that it would be okay to have that because I know it would be too many calories. It would be poor nutrition for me, poor quality nutrition, and that is not good for my body. And my body is sacred and important, and I'm not going to sicken it just to enjoy something that is really in the long run yucky, not delicious.
Reason, rules, and then refutations.
Yep. So my 3 R's, my reasons, my rules, and my refutations. And I run through this little routine every morning, and it literally takes 5 minutes. So that idea in the beginning where, of course, now we know it was the pig saying, oh, this is too hard. This is a pain in the neck. You don't want to do this. How annoying. I mean, now I can't imagine living without it. It's enjoyable. It can be fun. Sometimes the pig says ridiculous things because it hijacks my sense of humor, and I got a good one.
You do. I agree. You do.
Yeah. And so the pig will say really, really crazy things, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes the pig literally, when I say, well, why would I want to eat that? It'll just go, duh, it's yummy. It has kind of this stupid baby Huey voice. So anyway, which is kind of hilarious. I don't know if your listeners know who Baby Huey is. It's an old cartoon from the 60s.
I know who Baby Huey is.
Yes, I bet you do. Look it up on YouTube. They're out there. Baby Huey. It is hilarious. So that's what I do. I can't imagine not doing it. But in the beginning, I was told constantly, this is too much work. This is a bother. It's silly. It's weird. What do you mean you're talking to a pig? This is dumb. This is beneath you. But now that I've done it for so long, like I said, it's just second nature. I could do it in my sleep.
What does it feel like before and after you do that in the morning?
It's just very empowering. I mean, usually I've just gotten up in the morning, I've brushed my teeth, I've come downstairs and poured myself a cup of coffee because that's my habit in the morning. And I sit down in front of my laptop because, like a lot of us, we kind of go to our computer in the morning or TV or whatever people's habits are, their phone. I know our daughter says that she lays in bed for about 10 minutes when she first wakes up and looks at her phone. And maybe we're getting the news of the day or we're checking our messages or emails, and I do all that. And included in it is this little routine I run through. And it's very empowering. I always step away from it just feeling like, hell yeah, I'm set for the day. I am strong. I'm ready. There's nothing that's going to trick me. I've already seen the tricks. I've already purposely looked at the tricks so that I know what's coming. And often because of that, nowadays, the pig doesn't even try.
At some point, it can't come up with anything new, right?
Exactly. It's very quiet. I have to purposely unearth what it's thinking. And then in the moment, like in the lunch tomorrow, I'll be looking at the salad section in the menu and I won't even look at the other things because, the pig isn't even drawing my attention towards them because I've already uncovered its lie. I've already said, no, nope, you're going to tell me it's okay to have that in the moment. And I know damn well it's not. So you can't trick me. So it's very empowering to step out in the world and know that you can't be fooled and that you are totally centered in your place of self-control, self-discipline, self-possessed. I am a self-possessed person, and I used to not be. I used to be flying apart all the time and always at the mercy of triggers that were outside of me, external. You see something and you didn't know you were going to see it, and now all of a sudden you're craving it. You have to have it. I walked past a bakery and now, damn it, I've got to go in. And none of that is true. None of it. You don't have to do anything. So it's just super empowering.
What else had you written down, Kim?
Let's see. One of the biggest things that you taught me, Glenn, is to always look for evidence of success. And that was something that I was not accustomed to. I grew up in a household that was, to just put it bluntly, really negative, just very negative. People were often upset. The littlest thing could be a reason to be upset. There was a lot of negativity. And even though I thought I was a positive person externally, my friends would say I was, internally, there was a lot of negative dialogue. I was always chastising myself and always troubleshooting and doing the catastrophic thinking thing, but mostly focused on myself. And so looking for evidence of success, that concept, and I've heard you say it a million times, I ate all the cookies, but at least I didn't eat the box. And of course, that's a funny way to put it, and that sticks in my mind because it is funny. To be able to look at that, to be able to say, yeah, I'm not a perfect person. Nobody is, but I made my best attempt to be perfect, and I made a small mistake, but I didn't make a huge mistake. At some point, I went to the party and stopped eating and went home. It's not like I stayed and camped out in the people's living room and made more food and went through their pantry,
Sometimes it is a huge mistake, where you did camp out and go through their pantry, but you didn't do that every day for a year.
Right, exactly. There's always some success to be seen. And it can be little things like stepping on the scale one day and thinking, I probably dropped a pound, and you didn't. You didn't drop a pound. You might have even gained a pound, but you didn't gain 10 pounds. Or maybe your weight stayed the same, but you didn't gain. Or maybe you did drop a pound, but that voice in my head would say, well, it's still not enough. It's still not enough. You should have lost 5. I grew up in one of those households that if you got an A on your report card, you'd get chastised for not getting an A plus. So
you and me both.
Yeah. So that voice is in your head. And because of that, it's easy to overlook the little awesome steps you're taking and the little bits of success that you are experiencing that you can build on. If you don't acknowledge them, though, you have nothing to build on. It's how you put it, looking for evidence of success.
There's some clients where I did nothing but look for evidence of success. Their pig was running circles around them and telling them all kinds of horrible things about themselves. And, frankly, they were eating pretty terribly. But nevertheless, the only way I could get them better was to find teeny evidence of success and focus on that.
Right. I went through 3 drive-thrus, but I didn't go through 4.
How did you get yourself to stop? How did you make that decision not to go through the 4th one? Because obviously your pig was telling you that it wanted to, or you wouldn't have said that. How did you not go to the 4th one?
If your goal is actual weight loss, which I know the things you teach can lead to that, although in the very beginning, the focus is to just stop overeating. And then if you need to lose weight, you might start looking at, and I know this term is used a lot in many programs in the diet industry, but the concept of non-scale victories. Maybe the scale isn't reflecting what your weight loss goal might be, but look at all the other things that you're just feeling better, you're sleeping better, your skin looks better, whatever. If you've started to eat more healthfully, even if the scale hasn't quite responded yet because you're maybe still consuming too many calories of healthier foods, you'll still see evidence of success. The evidence of success isn't always on the scale.
So important.
Yeah, it is. It is just to give yourself a healthier, more positive mindset.
And if you collect evidence of failure, you're going to build a failure mindset. Each one snowballs in either a positive or a negative direction. So you really do have to make a choice.
Yes. And it's kind of like you were saying before, the grass is greener where the grass is watered. If you want to think more positively about this and feel empowered to do what you need to do and feel like that strong person that you can be, you have to build on all that positivity. If you're building on negativity, you just become more and more miserable and demoralized.
Exactly.
Yeah, which plays right into the pig's evil plan.
It sure does. It can beat you down and make you feel too weak to resist the next binge.
Exactly. Absolutely.
What else did you write down, Kim?
Well, my last little comment that I made before I wrote down some questions I have for you, I want to tell everybody who's listening to this that if you are a person who has struggled with these ideas and you've been on all kinds of different programs and nothing works, you always end up failing in the end, blah, blah, blah. If you are that person like I was, you have never given up because you're here listening to this,
Oh,
which means that you are still trying. And I'm telling you, I never gave up and I never will. And that absolutely terrifies that inner pig. It terrifies it that you are not going to give up. Glenn, I've heard you talk about this a zillion times, as have all of your coaches, that if you are a person who's never given up and you're still trying, you are so much more likely to succeed because all great discoveries and eureka moments come at the end of often many failures. The experiments fail until they succeed,
yes.
until you hit the right one.
You learn something with every mistake.
Well, and if you're anything like me, anybody who's listening to this, if you're anything like me and you're now discovering Defeat Your Cravings, you've found it.
Thanks, Kimberly.
This could
Thank
be
you.
your eureka moment. It sure as heck was for me. And I didn't think I'd ever have one. If I started listing all of the things that I tried for almost 30 years from the time I was a youngster, and I'm 60, I turned 60 in May, we would need another 3 or 4 hours for me to just rattle off the list.
Well, thank you for sharing your successes. You also have some questions, yes?
I do. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is this concept of a conscious pig party. And, I wrote this down a couple of days ago because it was really on my mind, interestingly enough. So the idea of a conscious pig party for somebody who's out there that may have experienced this but didn't realize what they were experiencing is when you absolutely know that you are planning and about to eat something that you shouldn't. And instead of stopping yourself the way we want to teach you to do, you do it anyway.
You get a case of the ethics.
Yes. Yup. And it goes hand in hand with, let's say you take one bite of something, or you say to yourself, well, I'm just going to have a taste of this, and then I won't have more. And then there's the thought in your head that says, you already blew it. You're already not perfect. So screw it. You may as well just go whole hog.
Screw it, you already blew it. Exactly.
And that concept of what happens when you lose track of your motivation and you feel like you just don't care? The pig voice, just this once, you could have it, And then you go, oh, okay.
That's a conscious pig party.
Yeah, exactly.
Kimberly, is that what your pig sounds like?
Yes, my pig definitely sounds like that. It's such an idiot. Anyway, what do we do? What do we do, Glenn?
This is the quintessential question. This is the thing that dogs people and really prevents them from accomplishing their goals. There are a lot of things you can do about it, and it's kind of a multivariate equation. The first thing is to reframe it as the pig is saying, we don't care, screw it, let's do it, right? You want to tell the pig, you want to separate from the pig and recognize that this is a squeal like any other, where it's saying, you don't care. You say, no, pig, I care very much, but I don't care that you don't care because I care very much. So you want to separate from the pig and separate from that just like you would from any other squeal. Secondly, you need to understand that response overall, it's driven by a false perception of emergency. The strongest thing that seems to drive it is inadequate nutrition, especially among people who think that they get adequate nutrition. If you're deficient in some very significant vitamins or minerals, especially if you're not getting enough calories throughout the day, if you're trying to lose weight too quickly, if you're trying to fast for a good part of the day. In the beginning, I tell people not to do that. After 6 months or so, if they really want to introduce some fasting, they can, if they've been having trouble for 6 months or so. You're putting your mind in a state where it thinks it lives in a feast and famine environment. So usually the famine precedes the feast. If If you're trying to lose weight too quickly and you're just not giving yourself enough, the brain will try to force you to be less discriminating with food. So that's one of the causes. There are other causes of that false sense of emergency. Sometimes it's being impinged upon by just too many things to do and decide about. All day long, you're answering emails, dealing with meetings, figuring out who takes Jenny to soccer practice. And, there are only so many good decisions you can make over the course of the day. Willpower is the ability to make good decisions. And eventually you're out. And that's when you get the screw it, just do it response. There are things like getting enough sleep, getting enough water, having enough social connectedness, basically self-care, taking care of yourself. There are a couple of more practical things you can do. One of them is to not let the binge fantasies grow up. So the pig says, screw it, just do it, have that chocolate bar. Well, that's a moment when some pig activity got inserted into your head. What most people don't realize is that there are intervening moments, sometimes short, usually a little longer, where the fantasy develops. You start to think about, where would you get the chocolate bar? How much time do you have to eat it? Where would you eat it? What would you eat it with? How would you hide the evidence? How would you conceive of making up for it later? Could you really get away with it? That whole series of fantasies is part of what empowers the binge to actually happen.
That leads to the actual action, all these thoughts leading up to the actual action.
Yes.
Any step of the way you could stop it, right?
And any step of the way you can stop it. But what you want to do, and Kimberly, this is something new I've been talking about lately, I don't know if you've heard me talk about it, is you can redirect your mind to fantasize about something healthier that would satiate you. I recently had to give up decaffeinated coffee again for good because I thought I could get away with it, but I really can't. My blood pressure goes up when I have too much decaf.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. There's some caffeine in even decaffeinated coffee. And when I do drink it, I drink gobs of it. And if I catch myself starting to fantasize, so I made my rule that I just never have any kind of actively decaffeinated products because they have some caffeine in it. If I catch myself starting to fantasize about driving over to this place that makes the best decaf that I know, I will immediately redirect my fantasy to going to get an herbal mint tea with some plant-based milk. And I'll remind myself specifically that that's just as delicious as the decaffeinated coffee. That way, the fantasy doesn't grow up, right? A long time ago when I struggled with chocolate, I'd have to redirect my mind to fantasizing about, I didn't realize I was doing this, to fantasizing about some type of a kale banana smoothie or a celery banana smoothie. I would find that that killed the cravings for the chocolate. And so I could prevent the chocolate fantasy from growing up. So you can come up with some very specific plan of action of what you're going to think about the moment that you recognize that fantasy. The other thing you can do is what we call 7-11 breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 7 and out for a count of 11.
Yeah, it's a good one. If you're having that sense of emergency, it immediately shuts that down and puts you in a more relaxed state. And then you can think clearly instead of just being like, well, I'm just going to go grab it. I'm going to go have that. Oh, it looks good. I'm going to get it. And instead kind of going just stop, calm down.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need to take a break. People will take a break in order to go eat some junk, but they won't take a break just for the sake of taking a break. And sometimes it's really the break that you need and not the junk. So you can do that. You could get outside. You can drink some water. After you've taken a couple of breaths, you can just journal about what's bugging you. You can do more refutations like we talked about. You find out why the pig wants you to screw it, just do it. And most importantly, I find that it's helpful for people to understand, first of all, the torture doesn't go on forever. You're not going to have this intensity of cravings forever if you power through it. There's a curve that you go through. It's called the extinction curve. Let's say that you stop eating chocolate when you're at Starbucks and you just get the coffee instead. I don't do this, but let's say you did. Well, your chocolate cravings, at first you're going to have a little honeymoon period. After a couple of days, assuming this was a daily habit, you're going to get a real spike in cravings because your brain is going to throw a temper tantrum saying, hey, Starbucks equals chocolate. How come I don't get chocolate at Starbucks anymore? If you get through that, then the cravings are going to start dying down pretty rapidly with a couple of little spikes over the course of the first month. And when you get to about 6 weeks or so, your cravings are going to be mostly gone for chocolate. You'll be able to walk into a Starbucks without going crazy. That's called an extinction curve. If you take that curve seriously and recognize that anytime you take a bite of chocolate, you're resetting the curve. You've got to start from zero and go through the temper tantrum again. When you have that screw it, just do it response, then suddenly you realize, wait, I'm going to reset the extinction curve and go through another 30 days of misery. I don't want to do that. It becomes more than just, well, you could afford it. You're not going to gain any weight. It becomes, oh my God, I'm going to go through 30 days of misery. I'm going to go through all that stuff I already went through. I don't want to endure another day one. I don't want to go through that again. All of these things will help you with the conscious pig parties. Also, if you take it very seriously and take the time to learn what you can from it if it does happen. Every conscious pig party is a result of one or more of all these factors we're talking about. And if you take the time to step back and analyze it, you'll learn something from this and you'll figure out what you can do better to get through. So, did I answer your question?
You did. You did answer my question, and I wanted to add something to it. One of the things that has really helped me in these instances, we end up hearing the same squeals over and over, and they're pretty common among like all people, listening to other people say, oh, this is, what I hear and that kind of thing. You can end up with a list of common squeals, you could call them, that all humans hear. And you can have a refutation for each one that works in an instant. But what I found was really helpful to me was the concept of having a mantra, taking any refutation and boiling it down to one quick sentence.
So, for example,
my most powerful one that I love so much, and it's so meaningful to me, and it is, I'm too old for this crap. And I don't use the word crap. I use the word that starts with SH. It's really meaningful to me because of what I was struggling with health-wise. Just that phrase invokes all of it.
I think that Danny Glover said that repeatedly in Lethal Weapon.
Oh, that's funny. I never saw that movie. So yeah.
It's worth saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Saying that phrase to myself in an instant. Let's say I'm in the grocery store and I walk through the chip aisle. At the end of it is the tortillas, and I'm getting some gluten-free tortillas to make something with. And I walk past all the junk food things, and I'm hungry, and I'm tired, and it hasn't been the best day. And I say to myself, I really miss pretzels. I'm going to buy a bag of pretzels. I'll buy a small bag. I'll share them with my husband. He likes them. And all at once, I will just think to myself, I am too old for this crap. And I'm telling you, it invokes all of it. The concern that my husband would have to retire and push me around in a wheelchair, the concern that my daughter would see such a negative example of what is possible, and just all the sadness that would be, leaving my community, leaving so many projects unfinished, not being able to help other people with their problems because I'm too mired in my own, gaining all the weight back that I've lost. Oh my God, terrifying. So, saying I'm officially too old for this crap. I have reached an age and a place of wisdom where I can't go back. I can't go back. And we're not going to go back to eating bags of pretzels in the car on the way home from the grocery store. We're not doing it. It's really, really powerful to have a mantra. And anybody is capable of coming up with their own. Once they experience this and play with the idea of refutations and all of that, it really helps to shut down the conscious pig party, to do those 7-Eleven breaths, recognize that a craving is not an emergency and that they don't have to act on it, and that at any step of the way they can arrest it, and also to have a powerful mantra that just pops into your head like a song that you can't get rid of. It's the earworm. Is your own little phrase, and it's yours. It's your own phrase. Feel free to use I'm too old for this crap if you want.
I remember another one of your mantras that a lot of people are using now. Do you know which one it is?
No. What is it?
When your pig says you could just eat this stuff now and start again tomorrow, I think you say, well, how about you start again tomorrow, pig?
Yes, I have. I felt brilliant when I came up with that, and I do still use that. If I have any thought that it's like, we're going on vacation, you'll gain a few pounds, but you can No, I will often say that to myself, that it's like, no, there is no tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes because each day there's another tomorrow, and the pig will keep pushing your start date of taking better care of yourself into the future indefinitely. And so I like to say to the pig, I'm not going to start over tomorrow. You know what, pig? How about I'll overeat tomorrow for you? Guess what, pig? Tomorrow never comes.
It's like Tai Chi against your pig, using its energy against it.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm not waiting until tomorrow, Glenn, to make my dreams come true. I'm not waiting anymore. The pig can wait. It can wait forever.
How long have you been thin?
Oh, at this point, it's been almost 2 years, actually, about a year and a half. I lose the timeline here and there, but it was 2021, kind of mid 2021. We're a little past mid 2023 at this point that I reached my goal weight officially. And then I went a little lower than my goal weight. I was so excited about my newfound self control that I pushed it even a little lower, not dangerously low, but my goal weight was always kind of based on my age and my body type and how I exercise, how I move. It was always based on kind of the high end of that range that we're given. Like, for your height, you should weigh blah, blah, blah. And mine was kind of in the high range, and then I pushed it down to the lower range. And then I decided that it wasn't that it was too difficult to maintain, because I've heard people say that. Mostly, I didn't feel as energized. I don't know how to explain it. At a lower weight, I felt like kind of weak, like I didn't have enough oomph.
You probably weren't eating enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to have a little weight to push the couch across the floor. You can't be a little stick body. So, yeah, then I gained about 10 pounds back. And so I like to say that, I lost over 90 pounds, but at my current weight right now, it's about 85 pounds that I lost. And I've been maintaining that for quite a while now. And easily, that's the crazy part. I couldn't easily maintain a 10-pound loss in the past.
Well, that's fantastic. So how do you know that it's permanent?
Because I've had a brain transplant. No, because I have such a different way of thinking about food, about nourishing myself. People that I'm trying to help, I tell them repeatedly, stop thinking eat and think nourish. Instead of saying, what will I eat today? Or what will I eat for my lunch today? Think, how will I nourish myself? And when you use the word nourish, it conjures, at least for me, a picture in my mind of fresh produce and beautiful foods, colorful foods. It does not conjure a picture of a bag of chips or a box of crackers or some bland-looking deep-fried nonsense or sweets. It doesn't conjure that. Like I said, in my mind, I immediately see all these beautiful fresh fruits and vegetables. So using the word nourish, I use that word all the time. I have all of my habits that were difficult, not just daily habits, because sometimes it's easy to get a handle on your daily self where you're in control in your own household, at your own office, whatever. It was harder to deal with the sporadic things like holidays, travel, being invited to a party. And I now have go-to ways of handling those things where I completely enjoy myself. I have a blast. But I don't necessarily overeat, or I plan ahead of time the treat that I'm going to have that will be part of that celebration. Now I just do it, Glenn. And I can't imagine anything that's going to happen to me to make me not just do that. There's nothing I can think of that's going to make me go back.
I never heard you talk about focusing on nourishing rather than eating.
Yeah. I actually have a little meme that I send to people.
What does it look like?
It's just a little meme that I found online that says, I think it says, notice how your mind shifts when you replace the word eat with nourish. And then, of course, because I'm me, I ran through a bunch of sentences in my head that would include the word eat. And I replaced it with the word nourish. And it was like, oh my God, yeah. I just went from seeing myself with a fork putting food in my mouth to all of a sudden seeing this cornucopia of fresh fruits and vegetables.
I love it. Did you have any other questions written down for me?
I do. I have one that I really want to hear. Do you remember, when was the turning point for you personally? So when you were developing these techniques and ideas and you were doing research and figuring out how to solve your own problem with overeating and with having a weight issue, do you remember when was there actually that point between this is a big experiment, it's a big crapshoot, I don't really know what I'm doing, okay, I'm starting to figure this out, to your own feeling of I'll never go back, this is permanent now?
I didn't have all the tools that we develop now. Now people, they mostly get their cravings under control in 30 to 90 days. For me, it took a number of years because I was really forging the system as I went along. But the real turning point for me was when I realized that if the pig had any power at all, it wouldn't talk, that it needed my permission to eat. What started to really lift for me once I realized that was that, I had control. There was nobody that could feed the pig besides me. The pig couldn't take control of my hands and my arms and my legs and my mouth and my tongue and force feed me a bunch of bags and boxes and containers. Up until that point, I'd really been struggling with the notion of powerlessness. I'd been in Overeaters Anonymous, and they told me I had to admit and accept that I was powerless over food. And it never really felt right, but it really weighed down on me. I think it made the mistakes a lot worse, because if I'd have one bite of something, I felt like, well, that's it. All bets are off, and I've fallen into some netherworld where I'm just going to dislodge my jaw like a snake and put as much of the delicatessens trays as I can into it, right? And it's amazing that you can convince yourself that that's true, and I think it's just because the pig really likes it. I think that, this is really exciting. That means we get to consume mass quantities, as the Coneheads would have said. When I realized that the pig wouldn't talk if it had any power, then I said, okay, now this is serious. Now I know what I'm doing. It's not that I never made a mistake after that, but it really started to all come together. I was willing to put more work into this particular method after that point. That was somewhere in my early 40s, which is a long time ago.
Do you think that there was anything to do with like the whole dopamine response in that, as far as like that concept that we know is true, that like you get a big dopamine hit when you eat, let's just say something sweet, a piece of chocolate. You get this dopamine hit, and then of course we exhaust the dopamine in us because we keep going back and having more and more and more and looking for basically that drug, so to speak. And I know for myself, riding through that time period where you're not going to be getting that is difficult, but then everything normalizes. Like you end up with a normal amount of dopamine in your brain.
The only way out is through.
I know you use the term like getting high with food frequently, where people don't realize that they're actually getting high with food because they're getting that dopamine in their heads. When you bite into something and go, wow, this is really amazing, I'm going to have all of it.
That's usually not a stick of broccoli. It's some type of processed concentrated food.
Yeah. So, I'm envisioning that time for you, and I know it took a long time because you were experimenting and developing all this. And those of us who read your first book and have read the last book you wrote and have listened to your podcasts and are listening to this right now, you have no idea, people out there, what a gift this is, that you get to do what I call cutting to the chase. Glenn had to do the whole movie.
It's true. It was painful. It was the bane of my existence for many years. Do you have one more question before we go?
I don't think I do. I think I asked you all the things that I wanted to ask you.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.